It's thinking.
I'm smiling.
Yay! And we're live on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am thrilled to be here today with Heather Young, author of The Distant Dead, to tell us about her brand new book. Heather, tell us all about it.
Thank you, Sarah. I am so excited to be here. I've been enjoying watching these programs over the past few weeks and just delighted to be on. The Distant Dead came out last week, and it is a mystery. To tell you a little bit about it, it's set in a small town in Nevada, a really small town in Nevada. And one morning, a young boy walks into the fire station to report that he has found a dead body. Ooh. And he has found the very badly burned body of his math teacher on his way down from his uncle's really remote ranch to catch his bus to middle school. So that's the mystery. The dead math teacher found in the desert. And as it goes along, you learn more about this math teacher who, it turned out, had just moved to the town from Reno, where he was a math professor. He had given up that career, a very prestigious career, to come teach middle school math in this podunk little town. So why did he come? What's he running from? You learn that he and the boy who found him had developed a very close kind of father-son relationship. The young boy is an orphan, and he's living in this remote kind of prepper off the grid place with his very, very weird uncles. And he's a bit of an outcast in the town. And so the math teacher is kind of his only friend. The person who's kind of working to solve the mystery is the social studies teacher at the middle school. And as she kind of delves into the math teacher's past, and maybe it was something in Lovelock, which is the town they got him killed, she gets closer and closer to this boy, because it becomes clearer and clearer that he's the key. He knows what happened, and he's keeping some pretty big secrets on his little tiny shoulders. So that's what this book's about.
Well, I'm already intrigued. I need to know more. And as someone who did not excel in math, I can kind of relate.
I was terrible in math. And one of the worst things about writing this book, every book has its challenges, but he's a math teacher. And one of the potential suspects is one of his former students, who is a math prodigy, who also shows up in this small town, seeking to reconcile after a falling out that he had with the math teacher. Ooh. So I had to kind of talk about the math prodigy and what he was, what made him such a genius. And in order to do that, I had to kind of try to understand math when my brain only goes to algebra 2. So and that was challenging.
That sounds challenging, but it sounds like you have mastered it based on, these amazing reviews. People Magazine Best Book of the Summer, a Parade Best Book of Summer, a Crime Reads Most Anticipated Book of Summer, and Kate Atkinson and Jodi Picoult called this a stunning piece of redemptive fiction. It is a book list. It has earned a book list starred review. Heather, congratulations.
Thank you.
In spite of this math challenge and all of the many intricacies you've just shared, clearly you have aced this exam, because these reviews speak for themselves. This is fantastic. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you very much.
Yay. Why this book? Why now?
Well, this book, I started writing it about 3 years ago. I am not like Kimberly Bell, your last guest, who can write a book in 10 months. Kind of hate her for that. But I'm much more slow. And the idea for this book, my family and I, we live in the San Francisco area, and my parents retired to Boise, Idaho about 10 years ago. And we would drive across Nevada to go visit them with our kids and their bikes and our golden retriever in the back. And it's just this vast, empty desert. And I grew up in Maryland, and deserts are not something that I had ever really seen before. So I was fascinated by the landscape. And it looks like no one lives there. Between Reno and Winnemucca, it looks like there's literally nobody. But one day we had pulled off at our usual gas station, because there's only like one in the whole, 150 miles. And
I'm nervous, but I'm excited. I'm waiting for it.
The pumps were broken, and we had no gas. And so we panicked. And then the gas station guy said, well, there's this little town. If you just go off the freeway like a mile, they have a gas station in the town. So we went to the little town and I was just kind of smitten with this town. It's this grubby little town with virtually no charm at all in the middle of this sandblasted desert. There's like 1,800 people that live there. It's the county seat. It's got all the schools and the fire department and the little tiny hospital. I mean, it's the center for life out there, as life as people know it. And I just was really intrigued by what would make people stay, having been born there, stay and maybe move there, because it really is this remote, isolated, kind of barren little place. So I had that in the back of my mind, and I knew that I would set a book there. So that's why.
Is that the actual name of the town, Lovelock?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Wow. So you were
Cool.
driving cross country to visit your parents, happened to run out of gas, got referred to this other town, and
Yeah.
that, how many years later, is where you set your book?
So that was probably in 2015. I was still finishing up my first book, so I had to kind of park it in the back of my brain for a little while. But I started it in earnest in 2016. So it took like 2.5 to 3 years to finish, and lots of trips to Lovelock, to stay in the Cadillac Inn and eat dinner at the Cowboy Cafe, and like, yeah.
Oh, wow. How many times did you go back there from San Francisco to visit?
4 or 5 times, because I my first book was set in a place where that I was very familiar with, like a little lake in northern Minnesota that we used to go to in the summer. But this was not a place I knew at all. And so I needed to just go there and walk around and talk to people and go hiking out in the desert and go to the library and learn about the history. I had to do some kind of site-based research for this town. So yeah.
Wow. I really appreciate your research process and going there and immersing yourself and smelling the smells and eating at the Cowboy Cafe and really immersing yourself in Lovelock.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And speaking of driving cross country and living in Mill Valley, I was just admiring your gorgeous library. Tell us about that.
So this library was just an ordinary room when we bought this house, but my
Wow.
dad, he was a lawyer with the federal government for his entire career, but he always loved woodworking. So he built me this library. He threw his table saw and all his tools in the back of his Subaru and drove it from Boise and just parked himself here and built all these cherry shelves. I mean,
Wow.
I had been carrying these books around in boxes for like 25 years, because I never had any shelves. So it was a really great gift that he gave to me to build this place.
Heather, it's stunning. I mean, it looks like I'm peering in on Jane Austen's library or some extraordinarily charming, straight out of Architectural Digest, plucked from the 1800s. I mean, I feel like you should just be a lady who sips tea from a tiny teacup with her pinky up, sitting in your library. Is this where you write?
I do some writing here. This is so I don't really have an office. I have different places in the house where I write, and mostly on couches. I'm a total couch writer. I like to just recline and type on my lap. And this is the place I come to write the bad things.
Ooh.
This is where, when things are getting dark and characters are about to die, I come in here because there's no natural light in here. There's no windows. And it's kind of got this, you're right, this kind of cave-like feel. It makes me feel like Edgar Allan Poe. And there's there's nothing I won't do to a character in this room. So this is the dark place.
All right, Mighty Blaze listeners, you heard it here first. There is nothing that Heather Young won't do to a character in this magical, gorgeous, mysterious library / writing cave. By the way, if that's what a cave looks like, I selflessly volunteer to go live in a cave because that is gorgeous. Even the Cave of Death, where I'm slightly terrified that you do terrible things to your characters. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. But tell us more about your writing process. We're so interested here because we have many, many passionate mystery fans. In the audience, we have just dedicated mystery writers, mystery readers. All of us love mystery. So tell us about your mystery writing practice. This is where you write the bad stuff, the scary stuff. So where do you write the good stuff? On the couch with the dog, or
there's a much sunnier room that has couch, and that's where the dog and the cat hang out. So yes, I have been fascinated too by listening to you talk to all these other writers and hearing them talk about their process. I mean, there's every writer's different, right? Like everybody has their own way of trying to access their story. I am definitely a kind of a groper in the dark kind of writer. I tend to come up with a setting first, and then come up with like the crime or like the tragedy that's going to drive the plot, and then the rest of it is very much kind of blundering through. Somebody once analogized it to like carrying a flashlight through a forest in the
Yes.
middle of the night. Like you can see the 10 feet in front of you where the flashlight's going, but that's all you can see. So you just keep going forward, 10 feet at a time, seeing what's in front of you. Sometimes you end up in some place in the forest that you don't want to be. So you have to turn around, go back to the main path. It's that's why I think it takes me a fairly long time, but it also makes my stories feel, to me, more organic, and the things that
Mhm.
happen feel a little more earned because I've had to really, they happen, they really do rise out of the consequences. The consequences rise out of the situations I've already written, if that makes sense. So
Yes,
yeah,
that does make sense.
right,
That does make sense.
right.
And you mentioned a moment ago that one of last week's authors, Kimberly Bell, mentioned that she is a book of year writer. And you're right, we would hate her if she wasn't so gosh darn
No, I
nice
know.
and
I can't
beautiful
believe it.
and
Yeah,
charming. She is the whole package. We love you, Kimberly. But yeah, she is a
right.
mystery writing machine. I am 6 years into my next project and still not done. So
Well, it
it
took
sounds
me
like you're
seven
somewhere in
and
the
a half
middle.
to write my first one, so you're good. You're good.
Okay, good. Thank you for letting me know that. So you write your your dark stuff in this dark room. You write your happier, lighter stuff in the light-filled room. Tell us, and it's interesting because I interviewed Jeffrey Deaver a couple weeks ago, and he was saying that he writes all of his books in a room with the windows closed, sorry, the shades closed, the lights off. He writes in complete darkness, and then he just he touch
Wow.
types,
That,
which is
that's
fascinating to me.
wild.
Yeah,
That's fascinating. Yeah.
yeah, he's amazing. So what is it, tell us more about your writing process. Do you rise with the sun? Or are you a sort of a late night writer? Do the words flow out of you? Or are you sort of like clawing your way along tell us more.
Yeah, that there are I will say that my process is pretty arduous until
Mm-hmm.
I get to the end, because I am a person who by the time I write the book all the way through one time, it's pretty much
Mm-hmm.
done. I don't have a lot of, there's some revision that happens after, but it's usually not very significant because it's
Mm-hmm.
just so brick by brick. Um, so that the end tends to kind of like just flow out of me like all at once because
Mm-hmm.
I really know what's going to happen by then. But the parts in the middle are definitely challenging. And one of the things about writing mysteries that are particularly challenging, I find, is the whole structure of a mystery, trying to layer in. I mean, my editor for both my books, I sent her the draft, and she's like, "Okay, that's great, but there's not enough red herrings. There's not enough like fake outs. Like we don't have any
Mm.
too many ulterior." I pretty much will just like write what happens. But to make it a mystery, you need to have the misdirects and the red herrings and the characters who might have done it but didn't do it. And those are the hardest elements for me. I often do kind of have to layer those in towards the end. Um, and yeah, that I think is challenging. And then at the very end, I'm like, oh my gosh, have I given it all away on chapter 30, on page 30? Can everybody just see this coming from a mile away? Or have I cheated and like pulled something out of my hat at the end that's going to feel like manipulative and fraudulent? Like I find that aspect of writing mysteries, like the actual mystery part, really hard.
It's so freaking hard. And thank you for saying that, because as someone who is currently wrestling with overlaying a red herring in there over my completed manuscript, it's very, very hard. And you do worry, that you don't want people on page 2 to feel like they've solved it. So what's the point of reading the next 300 pages? But you don't want to get to page 290 and them to say, what the heck is this? Where's this coming from? And to feel sort of walloped over the head or betrayed in some way. So it is such a delicate balance. And thank you for acknowledging that and for
like
sharing that. Yeah.
Like a Jenga tower, like everything just has to fit together so perfectly. And if one thing is off, then the whole thing just falls down.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I find that it's hard as a mystery writer too, when you know the ending, to really assess how well you're, if you're obscuring it just the right amount, or what that balance is. So I do end up relying a little bit on readers at the end. I have some trusted readers where I won't let them see it while I'm writing it, but when I kind of get a full draft, I'll say, okay, read this, and you just tell me if you had this pegged in chapter 5, or give me that mystery feedback and let me know if it's working as a mystery. And often, it isn't. I have to go back and fix it.
Oh, interesting. And are those people just purely readers, or are they your fellow authors? Tell us about who are these people?
Yeah, so I have a writers group that we meet every Wednesday, and we share our pages as we write them. But I have, like, I guess you call them beta readers, the people at the very end who haven't seen a word and are going to be able to give it a real clean look. And for those, I rely on my some classmates that I went back to graduate school. I went back and got an MFA and met some terrific writers there. And I know I can send stuff to them and say, okay, here's the draft. Give me your cold, hard, honest assessment. So I have these two types of people.
Oh, perfect. Okay, awesome. I just want to put it out to the audience because we are live. If anyone has any questions for Heather, just put them right in the chat box and she will answer them. We are getting some great comments. Anissa says, sounds interesting. Karen says, Sarasota, Florida here. Hi from Minnesota, from Sharon. Sarah Stewart Taylor Brooks says, this sounds so good. Sarah, we're interviewing you next week. Can't wait. Sharon says, how cool that it's based on a real town. Doesn't every town need a cowboy cafe? Sharon also says she's kind of scared. So I think this is working. So ladies, ladies and gentlemen, mystery fans, one and all, if you have questions for Heather about her writing process, about this book, about her last book, tell us your questions. She is here to chat. And meanwhile, while you're thinking of them, I will keep asking Heather some questions as well. But we are live, so if you do have questions, just fire them up, and I will get right to them. Heather, in the meanwhile, what is one book that has changed your life?
Oh my God. Okay, changed my life. I mean, there's a lot of books that have changed my life. I guess I would say, like, in the early days, I used to get all these Nancy Drew books for Christmas. Christmas, birthday, Nancy Drew, Nancy Drew, Nancy Drew, Nancy Drew.
Yes.
And I love those. And I would get like 4 or 5. I mean, there's a billion of them, and I love them. And I think the first book I read that wasn't and I also read the Hardy Boys and Trixie Belden and like all these other mystery series. And then I read Little Women. And it kind of opened my mind to a different kind of story. And this is when I was like, 9 or 10, and reading a story that didn't have a mystery that, the teenage girl sleuth was going to have to solve. It was just a story about a family of young girls and their lives. And that a book could tell that story and hold your attention and be so engaging and live with you really for decades afterwards was a real eye-opening, reading experience for me.
Yes, exactly. And I bet we have a lot of Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys fans in the audience, myself chief amongst them. I also got Nancy Drew's for every birthday and every Christmas. It was the highlight of my year. I loved Nancy Drew's so much. Oh, it looks like we're getting a lot of love for Nancy Drew's from the audience. Yay, we're all Nancy Drew lovers. Mystery lovers here.
She and hair, how do you pronounce that?
Exactly. Rena would like to know, you're a new author to me. What is one book of yours you recommend to us besides The Distant Dead today?
I only have 2, so that's not a hard list. The first book, and this is a shout out to the girl from Minnesota, is called The Lost Girls, and it's set on a lake in northern Minnesota, kind of partly in the 1930s and then partly in the 1990s. And I wrote that book as a kind of Little Women kind of story. It was family and mothers and sisters and daughters, and like the secrets that one generation keeps and how it can really cast a shadow over multiple generations.
Yes.
The secret that was kept in the 1930s was what happened to the 6-year-old little sister. And do find out so when they marketed it as a mystery, even though I hadn't really approached it that way. It is in that sense a mystery also.
Ooh, interesting. So you came into the mystery genre almost
By accident.
unexpectedly, accidentally. Oh, fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
That is so cool to know. And, the one thing that I will notice, my first book was not a mystery. I'm working on my second one now. It is a mystery. The one thing I noticed is how universal mysteries are. Of course, there are dedicated mysteries, but any book worth its salt has some element of mystery. That's what keeps it going. We're trying to discover parts of ourselves or discover family secrets, like you said. We've got to have that. That's what keeps the pages turning. Is this going to work out or not? Is this going to happen? There's always some question.
Yeah. And I did end up feeling like after that first book, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm a mystery writer. And I realized, I didn't have to do another mystery, but I realized what I had liked about the first book and what I liked about the idea for the second book is that if somebody is meets a violent end by whatever means,
in your dark room,
in my dark room right here, it has lasting impact. It's like a crater that's gone off in a family, and just everybody spends the rest of their lives tiptoeing around this crater. And that's a really great place to come into for a story with these damaged characters that are going to feel guilty, they're going to feel regret, they're going to feel loss and grief, and it's rich territory from which to write. So that's what mysteries give you as a writer, is that opportunity to really look at the dark side of people.
Yes, exactly. And I love your metaphor of tiptoeing around the crater. That feels so visceral and so true.
Yeah.
You can really feel the pain and the tension of that as you describe it.
Yeah.
So thank you. Rena says, thank you for answering my question. Sarah says, Heather, I love your flashlight metaphor. Have you ever been completely blindsided by a plot turn a book took? Good question, Sarah.
I'm going to say not really, only because how to answer that. I have definitely changed my stories while working on them, but I wouldn't ever say that I was kind of blindsided by, other than the fact that like sometimes inspiration will suddenly strike, and you realize, oh no, I need to do it that way. But I'm not one of those authors who feel like their characters are in charge of the story. I'm much more in charge of the characters and the story. But I will say, with The Distant Dead, I had an ending that I was working towards where one person killed the math teacher, and at the end a different person ended up killing the math teacher.
Ooh.
And that, the way that came to me as I went along, really did feel pretty revelatory, because it was like, oh my god, of course it needs to happen this way. It's so much more complicated and messy and interesting, and is just going to mess everybody up so much more if I do it this way. And so that was cool. So I guess that's maybe an example of a story, a different way of telling the story, kind of coming out of nowhere.
Okay, the sheer joy in your voice as you describe how messy and terrible it is slightly concerning, but we're going to let you have it. I love it. So Heather, does this mean you are a plotter, a pantser rather than a plotter?
Total pantser.
Okay. Okay. So for those in the audience who aren't familiar, there's basically two types of writers. There's the plotters, the meticulous, and they rise. And like Jeffrey Deaver, they write 150 pages even of extremely meticulous, careful outlining, and then they flesh that out right to the outline. Yeah. Then there's the pantsers who go where the story takes them. Heather is self-identifying as herself in the latter category there.
Right. I will say though that a lot of pantsers, and I'm one of these, when I get about 3/4 of the way through the story and I'm about to go, do the final, crisis and denouement or whatever, I will look back at what I've written, and then I get really, really, really anal about it. Like, there are index cards for each chapter, and they get put up on a board, and they are like little strings that go between them, because I want to making sure that everything is happening exactly right. So I'm like a retroactive plot mapper.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand it. So you pants, you go where the story takes you. Yes. You organically follow it, which allows you to feel that it is more organic, lets it feel more real, more authentic. Then after you have written the whole thing, then you go back and write index cards for every scene and draw and put strings and pins between them. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, make sure that everything is lining up properly, and I'll make changes at that point. I'll move chapters around. I'll I'll add characters, but it's all based on this very, very hyper analytical deep dive into what I pantsed my way through.
Wow, that's so cool. This is really, really interesting. Cool. Okay, great. Oh, we have another question. How has the writing process been during this pandemic? How has it affected you? How has it affected you? Has it affected your concentration, your creativity? What's going on over there in Mill Valley?
It has really, well, the combination of having a book come out and the pandemic and everything around it I have not been able to start a new book. I have been able to do some research into the book I'm planning to write because I do kind of know that story. I have that sense of where that story is. But other than researching Iowa in 1943, I haven't been able to tap into anything creative. And I attribute that both to the stress around kind of promoting a book that's coming out, and just the craziness of like, my house is disrupted. My husband's now working at home and my son is home from college and I don't have an office. So it's been very disruptive, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. And I know I identify completely with that. And so do so many other writers that we've spoken to for all of those same reasons. The global anxiety of this viral pandemic holding, over our heads and worrying about all of our loved ones and ourselves. Also either the challenge of sheltering alone or the challenge of sheltering in place with a partner
with
who
partners and
may or may not have a booming man voice, that is slightly disruptive. I don't know. I imagine. Yes.
Yeah,
or maybe that's me. I'm also stuck with a booming man voice.
Well, I was talking to a friend yesterday who's a writer, and she said she has never been more productive. Like she's just working all the time. She's finding it like that's her escape from what's going on. Go into her writing, and so I wish I were that way, and I envy people who are like that. But I think there are people who are finding it that way.
Wow, those lucky dogs, because that ain't me. Wow, she is lucky.
Yeah.
People are saying they love our library backgrounds. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I know you've got a nice library background too. I like yours is color coded.
My books are color coded, and also I have my co-host Taylor the Wonder Pup here. But yeah, I had read that in a decorating magazine. So all of my books are color coded, and this is one of two of the shelves. So
it looks very pretty.
Thank you. But you do have to then know what color the cover of the book you're seeking is, or look it up online.
Yes.
Heather, what are you reading right now? Have you been able to read during the pandemic, or that concentration is also not there for that?
So I just finished Catherine House by Catherine.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, yeah, Catherine House by what's her name? Samantha Thomas?
We literally just had her on. Lissy Thomas, yes.
Yeah, she's it's her debut. It's really good. So I highly recommend it. I'm telling people it's like Hogwarts gone wrong.
Yes.
In all ways, like all the really best ways. So, and it was a terrific escape from everything because it was a smart thriller that took you someplace completely different from the rest of the world. So I would recommend that.
Yes, we just had Lissy on a couple weeks ago, and she was fantastic. And Catherine House looks wonderful. So it's great. It's so cool to know that you also enjoyed it. Yeah. Wonderful.
Really, really, really good.
Yay. Okay, cool. I'm just making sure that I'm scanning for questions, see if anybody has any other questions. You know what, Heather, let's enter the lightning round. Are you ready?
Okay. No.
Okay. Dog or cat?
Both. I have both.
Ooh. We have not heard that yet, so that is fascinating. Writer, dead or alive, that you're dying to meet?
I would love to meet Marilyn Robinson.
Okay, cool. Would you rather go camping with Bram Stoker or Anne Rife in the desert of Nevada?
I think Bram Stoker, because he'd be able to kill things that I needed killed.
Exactly. Get behind Bram.
Yes.
Put his sleeping bag closest to the door of the cave.
There's some critters out there. I would want Bram.
Exactly. In your mind, do you envision your book making a better Netflix series or a better film on the big screen?
Definitely a series.
And who would be starring in the series?
Oh no. I'm never able to answer that question because my characters are so vivid in my mind. I know exactly what they look like. I would trust Reese Witherspoon to pick whatever she wanted.
Okay, so Reese can have full creative control.
Full
We
creative
will.
control. If she
We
buys
will.
it, it's hers.
It's yours, Reese. You heard it here first.
Cast whoever you want.
Cast whoever you want. Is there a word that gives you the heebie-jeebies that you never use in any book?
Is a word that gives me the heebie-jeebies. Well, there's probably some pretty vulgar words that I would use. And I'm not even going to say them out loud. So you probably
exactly. We'll know, we will know which ones you're talking about.
But basically, I think as a writer, you got to be unafraid of all the words. You got to be able to use them all if you need.
Exactly. You got to be ready to slay like Brown.
Right.
What is something that you want readers to experience as they read this book or leave this book?
I want them to experience deep empathy for my characters because they are complicated people who are working through some difficult stuff, and they're not always going to make the right decisions. And I want readers to empathize with and forgive them those things.
Oh, I love that. Cultivating empathy is such an important and beautiful and much needed thing in the world today. So thank you for doing that work. I have one final question for you. Would you rather be stuck in Area 54, which is, as everyone knows, a very scary area of New Mexico known for supernatural activity? Aliens may or may not have appeared. The government has it fenced off. Would you rather be stuck in that scary space with H.P. Lovecraft or Stephen King?
Oh, Stephen King for sure. I think he would find it extraordinarily interesting, and he would be fun to kind of hang out with and talk about aliens with. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe they'd be attracted to him and stay away from you.
So yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, Heather, thank you so much for chatting. It has been fabulous getting to know you in your beautiful library where you write your very dark and scary things and do all your bad things to your characters in that space. Yes. We are so excited to hear all about your book, The Distant Dead. Again, congratulations on the absolutely amazing starred review from Booklist. Crime Read's most anticipated book of the summer, a People magazine best book of the summer, a Parade magazine best book of summer. You are killing it, pun intended. Yes. Heather, congratulations. This is fantastic. We all can't wait to read it. And we will look forward to hosting you next time when you are able to write that book.
Thank you, Sarah. And good luck with your book too.
Thank you so much.
Yours is fine.
Yay. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you again, Heather.